The invitation was folded perfectly, embossed with Howard University's crest, but the message was clear as day. We only have 4 tickets for the family section. Since you've been so tired lately, maybe watch the live stream. My baby brother Jamal was graduating from medical school. For years of being the Perry family's golden child, while I, Dr. Nia Adebayo, 32-year-old genomic researcher at Morehouse School of Medicine, became just tired. My phone buzzed. Jamal, sis, don't stress yourself. It's a long ceremony. Just relax at home. I closed my eyes. The tremor in my right hand began, not from emotion, but from myasthenia gravis, the autoimmune neuromuscular disease they'd spent 2 years calling stress. My own family. My physician brother. I opened my laptop instead of replying. Typed, Dr. Adila's office, please. Dr. Chambers, I said when she answered, my voice steady as a surgeon's hand. Confirming my arrival for Saturday. The faculty entrance. Of course, Dr. Adebayo. Your seat is reserved beside Dean Abina Mensa. Do you need ramp access? The ramp would be best, I said, my eyes on the tremor I'd video recorded that morning, evidence number 47 in my personal archive. My mother's text arrived as I hung up, Nia, sweetheart, we'll wave at the camera. Make some of your famous jollof rice and watch with us in spirit, In spirit, while they sat in the family section, celebrating the son who'd diagnosed me with performance and the parents who'd served me herbal tea instead of believing my lab results. I saved the text. Evidence number 48. My grandmother's voice echoed in my memory, her Ghanaian accent firm, Nia, when they tell you your fire is just a candle, show them you can burn down the house with your light. I opened the manila folder on my desk, not patient B47 anymore, but Nia Adebayo, case file. Blood panels showing acetylcholine receptor antibodies. EMG results. Videos of my drooping eyelid. Transcripts of Jamal telling our parents, she's just seeking attention. Saturday wasn't about graduation. It was about documentation. I was done being their tired daughter, their dramatic sister. I was about to become their final exam. My symptoms didn't arrive with drama. They whispered. A fork that felt suddenly heavy at Sunday dinner. My grandmother's egusi soup, a taste of home, turning to paste in my throat halfway through the bowl. A strange, heavy curtain falling over my right eye every evening at 5, making the world tilt. At first, my family's chorus was concern. Nia, you're working too hard at that lab, Mama would say, her voice layered with that particular Nigerian mother worry. All those hours staring at DNA sequences. It's not natural. Then Jamal, home from his 3rd year of med school, entered the diagnostic ring. He watched me struggle to rise from the dinner table one evening, my thighs trembling. He didn't offer a hand. He steepled his fingers, a gesture he'd copied from some white attending physician. Sis, he said, his voice taking on that clinical, detached tone I'd come to dread. When you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras. This presentation, fatigue, muscle weakness, intermittent dysphagia, it's textbook for a stress-induced conversion disorder. Your mind is converting psychological distress into physical symptoms. The room shifted. Mama's worry softened into manageable pity. Daddy, ever pragmatic, nodded. Your brother would know. My zebra had a name, given to me by Dr. Adeola Chambers, a brilliant black neurologist at Grady who looked at me and saw a puzzle, not a hysteric. You have myasthenia gravis, Dr. Adebayo, she said, handing me the antibody panel. Your immune system is attacking your neuromuscular junctions. It's not in your head. It's in your blood. I brought the results home, a shield of data. Jamal glanced at the paper, then dismissed it with a wave. False positives happen. MG is incredibly rare. The mind is a powerful thing, Nia. You've convinced yourself. My evidence was vetoed by his arrogance. My reality, rewritten by the family's soon-to-be Dr. Perry. My cane, when I needed it, was called a prop. My meticulous symptom log, attention-seeking. So I stopped arguing. I started archiving. Every dismissive text, every patronizing suggestion of yoga and green juice, every time Jamal said psychosomatic at a family cookout. I saved it all. While he studied medicine in a classroom, I became a scholar of my own dismissal. My life became a regimented, silent rebellion of alarms: 7 a.m. immunosuppressants, 11 a.m. Mestinon, 3 p.m. second dose. I managed a research team by day, documented my betrayal by night. I wasn't collecting bitterness. I was compiling a damning, peer-reviewed case study on familial gaslighting. And the most critical piece of evidence wasn't a text or a lab result. It was the consent form Dr. Chambers had me sign, anonymizing my case for the Howard University neurology module Jamal was taking. His final exam, it turned out, would be about me. Dina Bina Mensa processed to the podium, her Kent stole a tapestry of legacy. Graduates, her voice rang out, you inherit the stethoscope of Dr. Crumpler and the scalpel of Dr. Kennedy. But your first instrument is the ear. To listen is our sacred duty, forged when no one would hear us. Her tone hardened. But there is a betrayal that poisons that legacy. When one of our own uses medical language as a weapon against their kin. She nodded to the AV tech. The screen flared to life. Case A23, presentation, progressive weakness, ptosis. Family assessment, performance. Stress. Diagnosis, myasthenia gravis. Delay, 18 months. A stunned murmur rolled through the hall. Jamal's confident smile vanished. The student who dismissed this case, the dean's voice cut like a laser, is in this room. He called her Cana Prop. He studied this disease in my class, yet was blind to it in his own sister. She turned from the graduates, her gaze finding me in the shadows. The patient is with us today. A single, brilliant spotlight snapped on, a shaft of white fire pinning me to my seat. Dr. Nia Adebayo, her voice thundered. Will you please stand? The gasp from the balcony was audible. I saw my mother's hand fly to her mouth. I placed my hand on my ebony cane, my grandmother's gift, now my anchor of truth. I pushed against the floor. My legs, traitors on so many days, held firm. I rose. The silence was absolute. I stood straight, my Ankara print dress a declaration, my twist out a crown. I did not look at the balcony. I let the 5,000 witnesses see the evidence standing before them. A sound began in the faculty section, not applause, but a deep, resonant hum of recognition. It built, rolling across the graduates, a wave of dawning, horrified understanding. The spotlight held me, but its heat now radiated upward, searing the balcony where my family sat frozen. The ancestors' lesson was no longer theory. It was flesh, bone, and polished wood, standing tall. The wave of recognition crested into a deafening silence. All eyes in the vast auditorium were dual-tracked, between my face on the giant screens and the sea of black robes where my brother sat. Dean Mensa let the silence deepen, a masterful pause that turned the hall into a pressure chamber. Patient A23 did not remain a victim of misdiagnosis, she continued, her voice now a precise, clinical instrument. She became a principal investigator in her own case. She documented every symptom, every dismissal, every text message where her reality was vetoed by someone who wore the same white coat she was told to trust. On the screen, the clinical case notes dissolved. In their place appeared a new image, heart-stopping in its intimacy, a screenshot of a text thread. The messages were crystal clear. Jamal, 9 months ago. Nia, the mind is powerful. If you keep fixating on this weakness, your body will believe it. You're making yourself sick. NIA, the neurologist at Grady says it's myasthenia gravis. Here are the lab results. Jamal, labs can be wrong. I'm telling you as a future doctor, this is psychological. Stop with the drama. A second screenshot appeared. Jamal, 5 months ago, after I'd started using the cane. Seriously? You're 32. This is getting pathetic. You're enjoying the attention. A collective, horrified breath was drawn by 5,000 people. This wasn't just a medical error. This was cruelty, documented in cold, digital ink. I kept my gaze on the dean. I would not give him the satisfaction of seeing my eyes find him in his shame. The student who wrote these texts, Dean Mensah said, each word dropping like a stone into the silence, is Landon Perry. As she spoke his name, the broadcast camera, with ruthless efficiency, found him. It zoomed in, and Landon's face, now a mask of ashen, graying shock, filled the screen beside my own. The brilliant, arrogant future doctor was gone. In his seat sat a hollow-eyed stranger, staring at his own words projected 40 feet tall. He will not receive his diploma today, the dean pronounced, the finality in her voice absolute. It is withheld, pending a full ethical review and remediation. We do not confer the title doctor upon those who use their knowledge to inflict harm. In the balcony, my mother let out a small, wounded cry. My father slumped forward, face in his hands. The family section, their field of dreams, had become a gallery of public ruin. The spotlight still held me. But the judgment was complete. The evidence had been entered. The verdict was now theirs to carry. The dean's pronouncement hung in the air, a judgment rendered, a future suspended. The ceremonial music that should have swelled felt blasphemous now. Instead, a terrible, rustling quiet descended as the provost, his face pallid, stepped back to the podium to continue the roll call. The alphabetical march of names was a torturous, mechanical parade. Each graduate who crossed the stage took their red envelope with a smile that looked strained under the weight of what had just transpired. The applause was thin, distracted. Everyone was waiting. Pearson, Aaliyah. Envelope. Peterson, James. Envelope. Then a pause, a visible tightening of the provost's jaw. Perry, Landon. The name landed like a physical object in the silent hall. All movement ceased. Landon stood. The camera, unrelenting, followed his every step. He moved like a man wading through tar, his golden confidence replaced by a stiff, horrible dread. The walk to the stage was an eternity of exposed shame. He climbed the steps and stood before the provost, who held no envelope, offered no handshake. The provost's voice was flat, amplified for all to hear. Landon Perry. Your diploma is withheld pending review by the Academic and Ethical Standards Board. There was no congratulations. No doctor. Just empty space between his outstretched hands. For 3 agonizing seconds, Landon stood exposed on the stage, a man publicly unmade. The only sound was the distant click of 100 phone cameras capturing his naked humiliation. Then he turned, a marionette with cut strings, and walked back to his seat. The camera stayed on him until he sank down, a black hole of disgrace amid the celebrating robes. In the balcony, my mother was sobbing openly into my father's shoulder. He stared straight ahead, unseeing, the proud dad of Dr. Perry mug he'd brought now a grotesque parody at his feet. But my work wasn't done. As the recessional music finally swelled, signaling the end, Dean Mensah leaned toward me, her voice low. The board is convening now, Dr. Adebayo. Your testimony is the final piece of evidence. She met my eyes. This is where we build the new standard. I rose, my cane a firm companion. I did not glance toward my family's ruin. I turned my back on the spectacle and followed the dean through a side door, leaving the echoing cheers behind. The battle in the arena was over. Now, we went to shape the judgment in the chambers. My evidence had toppled the golden child. Now, it would dictate the terms of his repentance. The door closed, muting the celebratory roar to a dull, distant hum. We were in the sterile, fluorescent-lit underbelly of the institution. The dean led me past stacked chairs and coiled cables to a nondescript conference room. Inside, the air was cold, smelling of stale coffee and laminate. At a scarred table sat 2 men, Dr. Kwame Sterling, chair of neurology, his expression one of profound professional disappointment, and Mr. Philip Greaves from Ethical Standards, a man whose gray suit seemed designed to absorb emotion. Landon was already there, escorted by a student affairs officer. He looked shrunken, still in his gown, the velvet had now a crumpled mockery around his neck. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "This is a formal hearing of the board," Dean Mensah stated, taking her seat at the head. "Ms. Adebayo, the signed consent you provided for your case to be used anonymously in our curriculum is the foundation here. You also voluntarily submitted digital communications as evidence of psychosocial harm. Is that correct?" "It is," I said, my voice steady. "I submitted them as clinical data." "Good." She turned a piercing gaze on Landon. "Mr. Perry, the charge is a severe breach of Section 4B of the Student Code, conduct unbecoming a future physician. Willful misinformation, trivialization of a confirmed diagnosis, and the intentional infliction of psychological harm. Do you understand?" Landon's throat worked. A single, strangled yes escaped. Mr. Greaves slid a single document across the table. "This is a formal acknowledgement. It states you accept full, personal responsibility for the ethical breach described, with no appeal. Sign it." Landon's hand trembled violently as he took the pen. The scratch of his signature was the only sound in the room. "Your remediation," Dr. Sterling said, his voice cool, "is not punishment. It is an attempt to cure fatal arrogance. For 4 weeks, you will shadow in our neuromuscular clinic. You will log every symptom patient's report. You will write a 10,000-word analysis deconstructing, line by line, how your texts constitute medical gaslighting." He leaned forward. "You will learn the difference between tired and neuromuscular failure. You will not be a doctor until you understand, on a cellular level, the harm you've done." Finally, Dean Mensah looked at me. "Ms. Adebayo, as the witness, you may add a final statement to the record." All eyes turned to me. I saw the expectation, the tears, the fury, the emotional climax. I placed my hand on my cane. "My only requirement," I said, my words clear as cut glass, "is that this institution treats his failure as a professional one. His remediation cannot be about my feelings. It must be about the standard. Make him a competent professional, or do not let him practice. That is all." In the silence that followed, I saw it, not forgiveness, but the first flicker of genuine, terrified understanding in my brother's eyes. The golden child was gone. In his place sat a student who had finally been given an F. The boardroom's sterile judgment still hung in the air when the door burst open. My family spilled into the hallway, a tableau of shattered pride. Mama's mascara was a river down her cheeks. Daddy's shoulders slumped under an invisible weight. "Nia, baby," Mama rushed forward, hands fluttering, her voice a ragged whisper. "That case, that patient, that was you?" Her horror was fresh, as if the diagnosis were news. 2 years of my truth, now a revelation in a hallway. "I told you, Mama. Many times." My voice was calm, a stark contrast to her tremor. "You chose to listen to him instead." Daddy looked at me, his eyes hollow. We thought you were just stressed, sweetheart. Overworked." "Just tired," I echoed, the phrase now an epitaph for their neglect. That was the problem. Aunt Carol, who'd once recommended cayenne pepper cleanses, hovered behind them, shamefaced. Uncle Ben studied the floor tiles. The family that had hosted grand Sunday dinners debating Landon's brilliance now stood in a huddle of public disgrace. Dean Mensah stepped forward, her presence reasserting the gravity of the space. "Mr. and Mrs. Perry, this failure was not his alone. It was enabled. Therefore, as a condition of your son's remediation, you will both attend the hospital's chronic illness family education program. Every session. This is not optional." Mama's jaw dropped. "But we are now," the dean stated, her tone leaving no room for appeal, "officially family members in need of education. My office will send the schedule." She had recategorized them. They were no longer the proud audience, they were subjects requiring remedial instruction. Finally, I spoke into the stunned silence. "My terms are simple," I said, my grip firm on my cane. "No more suggestions of yoga or ginger tea. No more telling me to stay home when I'm tired. You will treat my myasthenia gravis as the medical fact it is. That is the new reality. I looked at each of them, my weeping mother, my broken father, my cowering aunt and uncle. There is no other version of this story. Not anymore. Before they could form a reply, I turned. The dean held the outer door open. Behind me, my family remained frozen in the fluorescent glow, their old world demolished, the blueprint for a new one, written in my data, my evidence, my unwavering truth, laid bare before them. I did not look back. My testimony was complete. The hallway door sighed shut, muting my family's stunned silence. I walked beside Dean Mensah, my cane steady tap-tap on the polished concrete the only sound in the service corridor. We emerged into the chaotic, sun-drenched aftermath of the ceremony. The campus quad was a swirling sea of joy, caps tossed in the air, families embracing, the air thick with laughter and the smell of celebration. We moved through it like a stone parting a stream. Eyes followed us, the imposing dean and the woman with the cane from the giant screens. Whispers bloomed in our wake, but they were different now. They carried the weight of recognition, not pity. We reached the secluded faculty lot. My car waited, an island of calm. Dean Mensah turned to me, the formal administrator softening into Dr. Chambers, my neurologist. Nia, she said, using my first name for the first time. What you did, it was a profound act of medical justice. Your case file won't just change a curriculum. It will change minds. It wasn't about changing minds, I said, the afternoon sun warm on my skin. It was about forcing them to see the evidence they'd ignored. She nodded, a glint of pride in her eyes. The Living Legacy Oral History Project starts next month. We want you to lead it, documenting the Black women in medicine whose work was credited to others. Your methodology, it's exactly what we need. The offer hung in the air, not as a consolation, but as an acknowledgement. A redirecting of my skills from personal defense to institutional legacy. I'll consider it, I said. And I would. It was work that mattered. As I drove away, the celebratory chaos fading in my rearview, my phone remained dark. No frantic calls, no pleading texts. The silence was their first lesson learned. I didn't go home. I drove to the community garden in West End, the one my grandmother had helped found. I sat on a sun-warmed bench, among the collard greens and okra, and finally took a full, deep breath. The tremor in my hands was gone. The tightness in my chest, the one I'd carried for years, the pressure of their disbelief, had dissolved. I hadn't just won an argument. I hadn't merely gotten revenge. I had conducted a peer review of my own life and forced the hostile reviewers to recant. I had entered my truth into the permanent record. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of gold and violet. For the first time in a long time, the fatigue I felt was just fatigue, simple, honest, and mine alone. It required no explanation. It was just a fact. And I was finally free to just feel it. 3 weeks later, the formal offer arrived on heavy, cream-colored stationery, Project Director, The Living Legacy Archives, Howard University College of Medicine. My corner office overlooked the historic quad, not a sterile lab. My tools were now interview recorders, transcription software, and the deep, patient listening I'd once begged for. My first subject was Miss Clara Evans, 91, a retired midwife who'd delivered over 1,000 babies in rural Georgia before any hospital would grant her admitting privileges. As she spoke, her hands, gnarled like tree roots, mapped stories in the air. They'd call me for the hard ones, she said, her voice a whisper of dry leaves. When their fancy machines and degrees failed, they'd come find the old black woman with the bag. I kept my own records. Names, dates, outcomes. In a pink floral notebook they'd have called a diary. I recognized the glint in her eye. It was the same one I saw in my mirror each morning, the fierce intelligence of an archivist protecting her truth. May I see it? I asked softly. She produced it from a lace-trimmed pillowcase. The pages were filled with elegant, looping script, a census of hidden history. I didn't just scan it. I photographed each page with meticulous care, my professional calm belying the reverence thrumming in my veins. This was my grandmother's generation's version of my symptom log. Their evidence. As I packed up, my phone buzzed, a single, tentative text from Mama. We attended the first family session today. It was hard. They talked about gaslighting. I think I finally understand what that word means. I didn't reply immediately. I looked at Miss Clara, dozing now in her armchair, her pink notebook safe in my archival case. I looked at my own reflection in the dark window, a woman with a title, a mission, and a cane that was now a badge of honor, not a stigma. Finally, I typed back, my thumb steady. Understanding is the first step. The work is what comes next. I hit send, then powered down my phone. The silence in the wake of the message was not oppressive. It was spacious. It was the sound of a new protocol being established, of boundaries solidifying like settled data. The past was a closed case file, meticulously documented. The future was an open archive, waiting to be filled with truths too long unheard. And for the first time, I held the pen. 6 months to the day, I sat in my archive office, sunlight pooling on the restored pages of Miss Clara's floral notebook. My inbox held a notification. The first Living Legacy podcast episode, The Notebook and the Nation, had topped the university's charts. My grandmother's voice seemed to whisper from the beams, "You didn't just keep your receipts, child. You built a library." A knock. My assistant leaned in. "Your brother is here for his final review session with Dean Mensah. He asked if he could see you." I paused, my fingers resting on a 1948 birth entry. "Send him in." Landon entered, changed. Not just humbled, emptied. The arrogant swagger was gone, replaced by a quiet, focused stillness. He carried a leather binder, thick with paper. "Nia." He didn't sit. "My remediation ends next week. The final essay." I brought it. He placed the binder on my desk. "You don't have to read it. But I needed you to know it exists. That I did the work." I didn't open it. The weight of it, the sheer volume of his repentance, was its own testimony. "The clinic," he said, his voice low. "I listened to a woman describe her MG fatigue for an hour. She used the same words you did in your journal. I finally heard them." He met my eyes, and for the first time, there was no defense, only raw, unshielded recognition. I was wrong. Not just mistaken. I was cruel. I used my knowledge as a weapon. I nodded once, a clinical acknowledgement. "And now?" "Now," he said, the word heavy with earned gravity, "I go where they send me. A community clinic in rural Alabama. They need doctors. I need to learn how to be one." This was the verdict, more meaningful than any diploma. Not fame, not prestige, but service. A prescription written by the ethics board. He turned to leave, then stopped. "Mama and Daddy, they're in a support group for families. They talk about you. They use your name, not the illness." I let that sit between us, a fragile, nascent truth. After he left, I opened the binder. The title page read, "A Structural Analysis of Medical Arrogance and Familial Harm, a Remedial Essay by Landon Perry." I closed it. His penance was his own to carry. My work was different. I looked out at the campus, at the legacy I was now charged with curating. The revenge was never in his downfall. It was in my ascent. It was in this quiet room, in this meaningful work, in the unshakable peace of a truth finally, irrevocably, seen. The buried had been unearthed. The archive was open. And my life, at last, was my own to document.